When you do your resume, make sure your contact information is right. I cannot tell you how many times I've picked up the phone to call somebody and their phone's off, or their phone doesn't work, or it's Aunt Edna's number, or it's the girlfriend who thinks the gal from my office is calling is the person that is her husband's cheating on. So you need to make sure your contact information, and you laugh, but I'll tell you, there's people that are sending hundreds of resumes out with the wrong contact information. And I'm talking about emails too. Make sure you keep those passwords in a safe place, because when your email's out there, people need to know where you're at and how to get a hold of you. And you would be surprised at the amount of those issues that come up. So when you go home today, take out your resume and call the number, make sure it rings, and send yourself an email. That way you're 100% sure that that stuff is available. I get a lot of this, well, how come I have to fill out your app because I sent you a resume? Well, that's great. But a resume is a commercial. It's not a legal document. So your resume is great, but it better match the application, because that's one of the first things we're going to look at, to make sure those dates match up. And if we go to verify your employment, it better be close to being that, because there's not a lot of staffing companies in town that do the type of digging that we do. We verify everybody's employment. We drug test, we background screen, all those type of things. And you have to make sure that information is correct. You don't want to put down something place that you didn't work, or have a buddy answer the phone, because we're not going to call the person you have on your number. We're going to Google the company, and we're going to call into their HR. So be careful when you're putting down your dates of employment and what you represent as being your background. The other one I like to talk about is don't apply for jobs that you're not qualified for. I just went through about 40 resumes this morning for people that have no business applying for jobs when we clearly listed the instructions of what you're supposed to apply for. And I have a theory on why people do that. They figure, well, let me send this guy a resume. Maybe he's hiring for something else, or he might have another position. That's a good thought, but when you get 200 or 300 of those a day, you're not going to get read. It's not going to get looked at. And what happens is I can go through approximately 75 to 80 resumes in an hour. And sometimes I spend less than 8 seconds looking at them. And I don't use computer programs and things like that. And I'll get into why I think hiring is a contact sport, not a technology sport. But we have to deal with the rules that we're given. And part of that issue is following the directions and applying for jobs that we're qualified for. Now here's the downside of applying for jobs you're not qualified for. Technology starts eliminating you in the office of somebody that's hiring. You start applying for a lot of jobs. I have people that apply for every opening that we have, and that's not targeted correctly. So what happens is everybody just starts ignoring your resume, the computer pulls it out, and we don't see it at all. So now, next week, when we do have a position that you might be qualified for, you're not going to be considered. So remember who's getting that resume. It's just not somebody sitting at home all day watching Andy Griffith. They're going through hundreds of these. Internet postings. This happens all the time. We always post jobs. Okay, I post my name. We always tell who we are, tell them where we're at, tell them how to apply, and then what happens? As soon as the ad gets posted, phone starts ringing. Hey, I saw that job. How do I apply for it? Well, you have to go back and read it. It tells you everything you need to know. No, it doesn't. Oh, let's pull it up and read it. And we go back through it. All they look at is open job, phone number, call. It said post for send a resume or what have you. Even when I do open interviews, I have people call me and tell me how to apply. So I have open interviews 9 to 11:30, 1 to 3:30. Hey, how do I apply for this job? Hey, what time are you open? Hey, how much does it pay? All those things are listed in the ad. So if you see an open interview, go. If you're qualified, go. I think Facebook and these LinkedIn profiles and social media in general, not as much Twitter as yet, but they're going to be the job boards of the future. The jobbings, monsters, things like that, they're going the way of the dodo. There's less use. People don't want to pay. They go on Craigslist and post jobs and things like that. You want to make sure that you're up to date on at least what the social networks are. But I think in the next 10 or 15 years, social media is going to be the new job board. But that's not going to make it any easier, because it's going to be easier to put all this junk out all at once. How many people here look at Craigslist for jobs? I would advise that you do look at Craigslist. There is a lot of good jobs on there. It just takes a little practice on how to look through them. Lots of jobs on there are just crap. They're commission jobs. Hey, make $300, drive with me today. Come on, nobody's doing that. Because if that was the case, I wouldn't need to advertise. People would be beating my door down. I wouldn't need to have a Craigslist ad. Car sales, water systems, things like that. We don't do any sales jobs unless they have a base. I won't hire people at 100% commission. I worked at 100% commission for over 14 years, and it was fun when you got up, but the first 5 years was awful. So make sure you're getting something when you're looking for those jobs. And look for companies most companies, if you're legit, they'll identify themselves. They'll tell you who they are. Like we have a whole paragraph on who we are. And that's what's funny when people come into the office and go, well, I didn't know you were a staffing company. I don't like staffing companies. I'm like, fully disclose. Because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. But on Craigslist, you can go through those type of jobs on a regular basis. And I would suggest, if you're not, make sure you go through it, at least once or twice a week, to kind of see what kind of postings. After a while, you'll figure out what's a real job and what's a kind of a BS job. And the other thing is, you'll see the same ads over and over and over and over and over. Because nobody has any creativity. So let's just post the same ad and post it for 5 years. So don't neglect using Craigslist. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the employment gaps. One of the things that I look at when I look at resumes is employment gaps. You might have a year, 2 years, whatever it is. My question is, what were you doing for that time? I've had people tell me, well, I needed to take a break. I needed to take a break. That was the answer. That translation to me is lazy. Okay, they took a break. I mean, they volunteered maybe to leave, or they lost a job and just didn't do nothing for 2 years. Now you're in trying to interview with somebody and tell them why you're great, but you took a break. And the guy you're talking to he's going crazy. He's got tons of stuff to do, so he can't, or she can't, make the connection there. The other thing for gaps in employment when people don't have jobs, besides the charity, is Toastmasters. How many know about Toastmasters in here? Man, this is great. I've been in Biltmore Toastmasters. I've been in 2 separate clubs. That Toastmasters group is probably one of the best groups you can join. It's very inexpensive. And let me tell you, if I have 2 candidates applying for a job and they're similar, who's going to get the job? The person that can speak better or express their thoughts. That's a big advantage over the rest of the people that you're dealing with, because most of them can't speak very well. They tap their feet, they crouch in the seat, they play with their hair, and they don't even know any of these things. So Toastmasters gets you out of your comfort zone in front of people that are there to help you, the critiques that people do of all the speeches, and it also shows you how to run a meeting in under an hour. It's very good, and it's probably about 120 bucks a year. So if you're in that, that's where you need to practice your interview skills. In that extemporaneous speaking, or table topics as they call it. That's the exact same thing as being in an interview. Because somebody asks you a question, you have to compose a good answer in a certain amount of time. Never turn down an opportunity to interview. If somebody calls you for an interview, go. Why? Because I need to practice. You don't go buy a set of clubs and run down the golf course and think you're Tiger Woods. I mean, you have to get good at this stuff, and being good requires practice. What's the percentage of people do you think do not show up for an appointment for an interview? Hey, yell out some numbers. 65. Ooh, 50. And that is consistent between 12 and 100. I had a sales position open that I finally filled. I had 6 appointments last week, and 50% of the people no-show. And why do they do that? I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me. I haven't been able to explain it. It's stupidity, because then I blackball you. You will never be allowed to interview at Momentum if you no-show an appointment, ever. That's what I had somebody go, how long am I on the blackball list? And I go, well, until I die or sell the company. So that's one of the things that people pay us to do, is screen. And we can't screen somebody that can't keep a simple appointment. Now, in the job seeker's mind, they might have said, well, I don't really want to go to the staffing company. I don't want to waste my time. I mean, I have people call me that all the time. Is this going to be a waste of my time? And I go, yeah, it is going to be a waste of your time. When you ask questions like that, you're already telling people I'm not really interested. So, on the staffing company front, if you do get an interview with a staffing company, make it easy for them. Bring all your stuff. Fill out whatever they want. Be friendly in the office, because remember, the person that's sitting in front of you gets paid to find candidates. If you're somebody that's not a very good interviewer or is not very savvy socially, you're actually excluding yourself from a lot of companies, because they're not going to reconsider you. A lot of people treat the recruiters, some of them in my office, pretty rudely a lot of times. And I always wonder, like, what do you get out of that? You get nothing. So, working with staffing companies can be difficult. I'm not telling you everybody's ethical, but again, what else you got to do? You might as well go and interview with as many of these places as you can see, because the more people you see, the closer you get to getting a decent position. Social media. How many here have a LinkedIn profile? How many people here have a professional picture on there? Okay, not one that you were all sunburned at the lake after your 6-pack of Corona or whatever happened. I see that all the time. The Facebook thing is a minefield, a disaster. For God's sakes, make it private so you can share stuff with your friends and stuff. And don't allow people to tag you without your permission. You're at the party, having a good time, and the frat boys got the beer bomb, and you happen to be wandering by. And then they go, oh, Susie was there. Boom, let's tag her. Bam, that goes on all her sites, and all her friends, and all yours. So make sure you set those privacy settings. And don't put anything on there that you wouldn't want your grandma to look at. I think Facebook and these LinkedIn profiles and social media in general, not as much Twitter as yet, but they're going to be the job boards of the future. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the networking advice. How many people here attend networking events? How many people here bring resumes with them? Stop doing that. Because remember what the purpose of most networking events are if you go. They're usually businesses and things like that. The last thing they want to talk to is people that don't have jobs. So you have to go into a different mode, the stealth mode. If you go to a networking event, go to one with somebody else that's been there before. Don't be quick to give out your contact information. Be sure to develop rapport first. Because just giving somebody a resume, they'll just take it to shut you up. They're not in the mood at that time to be looking at resumes. Now, if they say, hey, I'd like to see your resume, you can say, well, great, let me get your contact information and I'll send you an email tomorrow with my resume. And remember to reference where you were at. Because when you get 300 resumes or 300 emails, 400 emails a day, it'd be nice to remember, you know, who that person was. You can't call me and say, hey, remember 3 years ago, I'm Tom from XYZ Club. I'm not going to remember who you are. So make sure you remind people of who you are. Just because you have a resume doesn't mean you have to give it to everybody. You want to make sure you give it at the right time. Let that person request it. Or let them come up with some ideas. I mean, if you develop a rapport, then you can have a conversation about, hey, if you know of any opportunities, you know, I'm looking for a position. I always say that when you go to these job or networking functions, whether it's companies and job seekers, and you're the person that's out car sailing, trying to get a job, it's like yelling no beer at a frat party. I mean, the room will just clear. I mean, it's like a guy that sells insurance. Nobody wants to talk to that guy. So don't be so quick to give out your resume unless you properly vetted that that's something that they're actually interested in. Otherwise, it won't do you any good. Everybody in here has probably suffered for some type of down, mood, depression-related events. Anybody? Just because of, you know, you don't have work or you're having struggle getting work. One of the things I suggest people do, and I put in my book, is like a daily schedule for the desperate job seeker. Get up at the same time, do your research at the same time, make your phone calls, call people about positions, stay in touch with friends. Don't just cut people out because you don't have a job. Your true friends will be the ones that will be probably your best resource to find work, because that's what moves your resume to the top of the pile, is who you know. It's still an old school network. Believe me, if somebody calls me and says, I know somebody for an open position, I'm going to get them to come in to the office immediately. And a lot of times they might get the job.